In this video, let's talk about the iPad. Do you need an iPad as a pilot? Hey, how's it going? My name is Jane. I'm a flying instructor, charter pilot, and skydiving jumper in Australia. Welcome to another video. As you may or may not know, Apple just released the new iPad 9 and iPad mini 6. And I finally made the move to upgrade my iPad that I used for over 6 years. This is my iPad Air 2, which is released in 2014, but I bought it refurbished from Apple in 2016. I got it for my first flying job as a flying instructor. To be honest, this beautiful machine is still working great. The only downside is the storage. I only got 16GB of storage. 6 years ago, it might be enough. 6 years later, it's not enough for what I want to do with the iPad. Anyways, this is a timestamp for everything I'm going to talk about. You can jump around the timeline if you like. Question number 1. What is the use of an iPad in aviation? The most used case of an iPad is for navigation using an application. In Australia, we have F-Plan and Oz Oneways. Both are approved by CASA as a data service provider. That means you can legally use the aeronautical information like the maps and weather forecast from the application as a replacement for traditional paper products. With the built-in GPS function of the cellular iPad, you can get tracking information in real time as well. However, you can't use the iPad as the primary navigation instruments, meaning that you can't solely rely on the iPad to fly and navigate. It's only a legal source of charts, maps, and documents. It's a source of information, but not a tracking aid. It's still a great device to replace all the paper maps, like all this. This is all the map you need for a flight. You probably need more. Also, you don't have to open your map in the cockpit like this. This is what it looks like. And on the iPad, you can move the map anywhere you want like that. You can also zoom in to see more details if you like. And you can't do that with the paper map. Also, another really good feature is traffic information. If other pilots also using the same application, their position and altitude will show up on the screen. It's great for situation awareness. Again, you can't use this for separation purposes because it's not approved as a tracking aid. Another use case of an iPad is for studies. Personally, I prefer PDF, ebooks, anything paperless. I don't need to carry a 200-page textbook around to study. I save the book in my iPad and I can study anywhere. Even with the two most popular textbook publishers, Bob Tape and Aviation Theory Center, have online options now. So music to my ears. Of course, if you prefer to study with a physical textbook, that's totally fine as well. Question number 2. What is electronic flight bag? It's an electronic storage and display system which is designed to replace traditional paper products in the cockpit. It can be any tablets, however, iPad is more superior. I will talk more about it when it comes to the software. According to CASA, the minimum screen size of the device is 200mm or 7.87 inches. So smartphone will not meet the requirement, which is fair. You can't really see much from the tiny screen anyway. According to Civil Aviation Regulation 233, you have to have a backup in case of a tablet malfunction, like overheating, running out of battery, etc. You can choose to have another EFB or hard copy charts, maps, and documents. Pilots need to ensure they have the most up-to-date documents. Again, smartphone is not acceptable to be a backup. So, in this case, you will need to have at least 2 iPads, one for primary use and one for backup, or you can have just one iPad and paper maps and charts for backup. Question number 3. What application to use in aviation? The most used application is of course the navigation app, F-Plan or Oz Oneways. Personally, I use Oz Oneways now as a charter pilot in the NT. If you want to know the comparisons of both apps, I can suggest you to check out Stefan's videos about that. He's pretty cool. Also, you have 30 days free trial of both options, so you can download it, play around with all the functions, and decide for yourself which apps you prefer. Another big thing to consider is that which application is more used by a pilot in your area. For example, in the NT, most charter companies and pilots are using Oz Oneways, so there will be more traffic information on Oz Oneway. You can't get the traffic information on Oz Oneway when you're using F-Plan. Again, this is not for traffic separation purposes, but it's great for situation awareness. Anyways, according to my research on Google, a lot of pilots prefer iPad over any Android tablets. It's mainly because of the software. Apparently, both F-Plan and Oz Oneways are not fully optimized yet on Android. Some features are missing. Personally, I can't confirm that because I never owned an Android before. But you can definitely see majority of pilots on any social platform prefer iPad for flying. Question number 4. What iPad is compatible with the navigation app? At the time of this video, October 2021, both F-Plan and Oz Oneways require iOS 12 or later to run the application. This is the list of iPad that Apple ever released. You can pause the video and take a screenshot. For example, iPad Generation 1, 2, 3, 4, and iPad Mini Generation 1 will not support the application. You can't use it because their maximum iOS is older than 12. But you can see a lot of older iPad is still able to run the application. You don't need to buy the newest iPad to fly. However, be careful with the iPad Mini 2 and 3 and iPad Air 1. The maximum iOS is 12. Once a developer updates the application to be iOS 13 or later, you can't update the app or even cannot run the app at all on your iPad. Question number 5. Which iPad should you use? To be honest, it's up to you. iPad mini is very popular for most pilots. I personally prefer the iPad because it's cheaper and the screen is bigger. I don't use the iPad just for flying, I also use it to write scripts or watching YouTube or Netflix. As long as the iPad generation is new enough to run the application and meet your needs, that is the iPad you should use. Question number 6. Do you need an iPad with cellular? Yes, you do need it, unfortunately, since the cellular version is more expensive than the Wi-Fi version. As I mentioned before, the cellular iPad has a built-in GPS, but the Wi-Fi iPad doesn't have it. So the cellular iPad will give you tracking information based on the built-in GPS in real time. You don't have to have a data SIM card to use the GPS function, but it could be useful for updating weather forecasts, etc. You can choose to use hotspot function from your phone for weather updates. Then you may ask, can I use a Wi-Fi iPad and use my phone to share internet? Yes, you could do that, but the hotspot from the phone won't provide a GPS position. You can only get accurate location. The error is way higher than a GPS. Also, the GPS will continuously update the position on the cellular iPad, but the hotspot from the phone will only intermittently update the position. Even though you can't use iPad for tracking, it's always good to have a way more accurate and reliable position information for you to have a better situation awareness. Question number 7. How much storage do you need? From a personal experience, 16GB is a pain. It's not enough. I constantly need to delete things on my iPad. 32GB is a minimum to be using the iPad comfortably with the maps, charts, and documents stored within the navigation app. 64GB or above is more ideal if budget allows. Last question. Do you need an iPad as a pilot? To answer this question, Let's talk about the different stages of your flying journey. If you just started to learn flying in your RPL stage, you definitely don't need it to fly. But if you want it for studies, absolutely. You can have so many textbooks in your iPad and carry it around with ease. If you're in PPL and CPL stage, you still don't need it because most flying schools will still get you to fly with paper maps and pencil. Even in your flight test, you may need to use paper maps. However, I start seeing some flying school and flight examiner that allow students to use iPad to fly, even for the flight test, as long as the students have demonstrated they know how to fly with the traditional method. If you are a licensed pilot already, hell yes! iPad make your life so much easier if you have learned and know how to use it. Just like a plane, you need to learn how to fly. An application with that many functions, you need to learn how to use it. That's it for this video. Feel free to check out my online school. More theory courses will be out eventually. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.